Good day, YouTube. Shizney Gaming here, hoping to bring to you a good video for, sorry, there's a hair on my face. Anyways, hoping to bring to you a good video for demonstrating how to properly use, Ferrum Aerospace Research. Now, an old channel of mine, Mr. Mike Says Hi, I had a video that, basically explained Ferrum Aerospace. However, I was still, lacking a lot of knowledge on it, and even now I'll admit, I'm not the most knowledgeable on it because I'm not an aerospace engineer. I don't actually know about aerodynamics all that well, but I do know a little bit more than before. So what we're going to do is we're going to build. Well, actually, you know what? No, I should say this video will be about how to build a correctly balanced space plane for, exiting and entering the atmosphere. I do have a few of these designed, and I got really good at making them. Basically, when you're building your engine, the people have different configurations. This is mine. Basically, I'll build this, right? This is my core. This is the only part that's going to be rocket fuel. The rest will be just jet fuel. Now, I don't like to do the whole cross-feeding thing because, though yes, in theory you can have more fuel that way, it makes it really hard to tell how much fuel you've got left based on your little gauge. Sure, you can look up at your resources, keep an eye on your oxidizer, but that just, why do that, right? Why not just know exactly how much you have? So if I continue on with my work here, I could just use the jet engine fuel tanks, but I don't. Call me a rebel. I just pull the oxidizer out. So go with control. So I have a 3 reaction wheel design, and this is done so that I've got plenty of control on landing because with Ferrum Aerospace, your lift is proportionate to your velocity times the wing area and whatnot. There's a bunch of mathematics on it, and well, pretty much that means that if you're traveling really slow, you could be pitched at a 45-degree angle and get no lift. In fact, you could be getting strictly just drag, which is quite a drag, as the pun would be. So, we're going to build this, and keeping in mind a few things. One, dry mass, or dry center of mass. Now this is a key to know. That is your center of mass, and you can build your lift proportionate to that. But when you're out of fuel, your center of mass will be somewhere else, right? So there's this handy plugin, RCS Build Aid. Now it's great for RCS thrusters, but it's also great for telling you your dry center of mass. You see this red circle is your dry center mass. When all fuel is said and done, that's what it's going to look like. And as I move it, you can see I can change where it'll be. This is all based. It also gives me a number, a decom offset. If I had it here and drained all the fuel, that center mass would stay right there. But of course that looks ridiculous, so I'm gonna place this here. Now, another way, or a way I like to balance my space planes is with monopropellant tanks. They have just enough mass to be useful, but they've also got the right size. Right, so I can drag my dry center mass over here, and I can lock these so they won't drain if I decide to use monopropellant. And there we go, my plane is now balanced. Empty or full, it'll just stay like that. So let's get on with the wing surfaces here. Now with Ferrum Aerospace, there are a couple things you need to keep in mind, such as drag and velocity and whatnot. If you want a really slow biplane, have really long flat wing surfaces with the wing connectors. If you want a high velocity supersonic, space plane, well then use delta wings as well as wing connectors if you can, such as this. The more wing surface you can get, the more effective your plane will be at climbing with minimal effort, as well as you won't be pitched at a 45 when trying to, accelerate in the upper atmosphere. Another thing to check is your center of lift. Now, typically in your standard Kerbal Space Program game, you want it right about there, right? Because that's the most logical. You want it to lift right on center of mass. However, with Ferrum Aerospace, it's a bit different. You can think of it like this being like a little streamer, just floating off in the wind, right? A little piece of ribbon or something off in the wind. Well, if you pitch the whole thing upwards, and this center of lift ends up going up, well, the wind's still coming at it this way, so the streamer is actually going to get pushed down. That's what the center of lift will do, is it's going to push back down and try to hold straight. And that's basically how it operates. And because of this, you will maintain stable at, Mach 9 plus. If I have it right there, you see now that's in front, it's actually going to want to still push back. So it's going to flip your plane butt over tea kettle. If you have it right dead on the center, you'll be able to pitch easily, but you will have no resistance, so the chance of a wing stall, which I'll demonstrate later, is extremely high. So you don't want it back here either, because then you won't be able to turn and you'll always be pitching nose down. You want it just somewhere so that this blue arm is in the center mass. And I mean, it's really preference. If you want a little more resistance, so your left leg is stall, put it here. If you want more control, put it here. If you're sociopathic and want a lot of control, put it here. But I like it anywhere around there, really. I'm good with anything. Next is struts. You don't want your wings to flux or flex and bend while you're flying, so you just throw some struts on the underside. You can see it's all fine and dandy. The thing about bending wings is that when a wing bends in its aerodynamics, the flow path changes. It does alter the lift and drag quite a lot, so you can easily flip out. So just a couple struts on everything. Non-intrusive. They look kind of cool if done right. Next thing is side slip. Back to your aerodynamics tab. Turning off angle snap just to make it easier. I like tail fins. You could use ones with actual yaw control, like the Delta Deluxe winglet. But I find the tail fins are just nice. I'll just put 2 of them on the wings so they're standing upright. The further back you put them, the more effective they are. As far as I know. See, that's one of the things is I may actually be quite wrong about all this. I might be doing things incorrectly. This is just from experience of what I understand is correct, and what sort of worked for me. So with that in order, so now you got yaw control, you want pitch control. Now we're just going to go ahead and put these control surfaces on. Right, I'll just put them on there. Now you can see it's brought our center of lift way back, so we can go ahead and actually push this forward even. Say like right there. That's still attached, yeah. We're just going to go ahead and strut the core of this. And you see, this is still remaining relatively close because things don't weigh that much. Or wings don't weigh that much, I should say, not things. We've got this strutted together. These are separate, so I will know how much fuel's in each system. So basically, when you switch between them and you get 2 different gauges, it'll show you your rocket fuel, or it'll show you your jet fuel, depending on what you're using. Next thing is, we're gonna want some power. I just throw in a couple RTGs. Nothing too fancy. Now in space, I understand that space planes. Oh, actually, let's first throw in some wheels. Wheels are always important. Turning angle snap off again. We're gonna throw them on the wings. And this is just to give a wider wheelbase for decreasing the odds of an unscheduled or rapid unscheduled disassembly, as they would call it. Now, some people, you can, if you're really keen on lifting off early and you're really good with these, you can in fact place some just behind the center of mass. I sometimes will do this if I really want to lift off soon, but when it doesn't matter and I want just more velocity on my liftoff, I'll just place them back here. The wider the wheelbase, the more stable your landing will be. Next, we're going to go ahead and switch over our staging. I'm probably rambling off, going different things, forgetting old things. I'll get to them at some point. But for now, we're going to toggle turbojets and toggle the aerospike all in the same action key. This means that when our air gets too critically low, we're going to switch over to our rocket engine to continue on. I don't worry about closing these intakes. Really, the amount of drag you get up at those altitudes, it's not that critical. Now you might be thinking, oh my god, you've only got 1 intake per engine, you're only going to get up to about 13 kilometers and then you're going to have to switch to rocket. That's so inefficient. Well, I'll demonstrate something kind of interesting with this plugin, is the fact that intakes are useful. Even the radial ones, are still pretty good. I'll throw a couple of those on to even bolster our altitude a little more, just to show how the proper configuration can actually go quite a way. Quite a long way. So you can see we got that. We might end up ripping those off on landing, because they seem to have added a form of suspension into these gear base. And I'm not sure if they've always had this, but I remember in the pre-.23.5 update, I actually had problems with these. The lack of suspension meant that when I would have them sitting right under my main engine tanks, I would land, and the sheer shock impact of it touching the ground and stopping instantly would just plop my engines right off. This also came from the weak joint structure that they had. Next thing is, yes, in space, you notice how sometimes you'll be accelerating and this thing will want to just sort of roll because of its off-center of mass. Okay, because you got your top wings here and everything can't be perfect. Except we have, well, RCS build aid. If you click on the engine tab, you can see we get a rotational torque from our engines, highlighted in yellow showing where the thrust comes from. In an atmosphere, this is okay to deal with, but in space, not so much. Well, the RTGs are kind of nice. Though they are efficient, they are also quite massive, so we can actually use them to calibrate the torque. And I mean, this is a very finicky process, but when done correctly, 0 kilonewton, I'm not sure what the M means. Oh, no. Put it over here. There we go. There. Now we've got RTGs to generate power. It actually looks pretty good, in my opinion anyways. And we've got 0 kilonewton M of torque. It also gives us a thrust weight ratio and a total combined thrust, which is quite nice. And you can also switch your things out here to show different engines firing at different times and show all that and whatnot. All that shizzle bo hizzle fo nizzle has. I'm probably gonna get sued for that one. Okay. Now, as far as I'm concerned, this is actually a functional plane. May not look pretty. I've got much nicer designs, but let's go ahead and let's launch this. I'm not gonna save it 'cause, like I said, I've got other designs. Oh yes, however, well, okay, yeah, this is a video about making a correctly balanced spaceplane, because I see a lot of people, they want to build spaceplanes, but they never really have much success either on atmospheric exit or entry. And I mean, the atmospheric exit and entry, yeah, they're tricky. I mean, if you don't do it right, you die. Basically, it'll crumble and explode. Now you see I've got my FAR flight systems, and for those of you particular on the aerodynamics, before you even take off, the FAR tab in the vehicle assembly building will give you a whole bunch of number calculations and a whole bunch of statistics that half of which only an aerospace engineer would truly understand, but I mean most of which you could figure out. It'll give you everything you need to know about your spaceplane. I mean, like everything from side slip to the amount of roll you get from trying to pitch up. I mean, it's unbelievable, but we're just going to worry about this for now, because most people, after watching this, will get the basic idea on how to build this, and they can play with it themselves after, if they so choose to use this plugin. Now, we've got a couple things here. We've got Mach number, we got the frac SL density, we've got a bunch of different toggles here. I'll just explain a couple of these. The Mach number is your number relative to the, or your velocity relative to the sound barrier. So Mach 1 is the speed of sound. Mach 2 is double the speed of sound. Mach 3 is 3 times the speed of sound, etc. The speed of sound is roughly 300 meters a second, so it gives you an idea. The frac SL density, you can also toggle between just regular atmospheric density. This is just the amount of air pressure around you. This is just, kind of useful for if you're really a lot more particular on this game. Next we've got the flight normal, no stalling detected. What happens is you get lift and drag with your wings, and this is a useful function that they've added. They've removed the static lift value, or the, deflection value, and rather they've gone and added lift and drag. Now, the problem is if you have air sliding over these wings, you get lots of lift, minimal drag. But if you have air hit perpendicular to the wing, so it's a flat surface, you get no lift and extreme amounts of drag, as you'd imagine. Well, what happens is, if that happens, it's hard to actually flip these wings over and get back into a regular flight. And you get what's called a wing stall. Now, before I run out of runway, I'm actually just going to kick my engines on here. We're just going to go ahead and take off. I'll tell you along the way. You can see, there's not much lift or drag being produced, right? Less than a kilonewton. It's like an iron engine, really. So of course I'm not going to lift off until you'll notice when we pitch up without crashing. Okay, we're going to have a bit of a funny flight, I guess. See, the lift shoots up into like the hundreds. So it's almost like another rocket engine, really. And this is Ooh, this is actually, I like the amount of lift. Now, different items produce different lift, and in the lower atmosphere at high velocities, you will encounter a lot of control issues. And by control issues, I mean like you're gonna be flailing all over the place if your plane's, you know, built for upper atmosphere flight. It's way too sensitive. But it seems stable. We're gonna follow a regular ascent up to roughly 10 kilometers, and we're gonna smooth out a little bit and pick up velocity. But you can see already I'm traveling faster than most normal planes would, with just a couple of engines. I mean, nothing unusual. Pulling the gears. They don't produce drag more or less either way, but it's just nice. So as I was saying, you got your stalling. Now, yeah, when you're in a stall, a wing stall, it's hard to come out of it. And unfortunately, if you're re-entering the atmosphere, the amount of drag induced... Oh my. Oh, I don't think we have enough control. As we pick up velocity, we'll get better control. Because we don't have any forward or front lifting panels. We only have these control surfaces. So as I was saying, the amount of drag that's induced from a wing stall, if say you don't have enough stability on re-entry, will actually shear your plane to bits. Like it's horrendous. One minute you'll be flying, next minute you'll be going belly first and falling apart, being shredded up in the atmosphere and just exploding. And unfortunately, without a proper escape system, like I'm lacking, it's virtually impossible to survive this event. Moving on, you can see we're already up to 15 kilometers and our intake air is okay, but we could do better. So we're actually going to go ahead and pitch down and pick up a lot more velocity. We are getting ram effects, but don't worry about those, they're harmless still. Now, airspeed settings, if you really want to know your surface velocity and whatnot, which is down here compared to different things, you can toggle those, but I wouldn't. Flight data is important. Pitch angle is how much up or down from your prograde you're facing. Heading is your really rotational on the nav, I guess if that makes sense. Roll angle is how much you're rolled. This is less than a degree. Angle of attack is how far away you are from your prograde marker. Side slip angle is how much yaw difference you're getting. Q is, I believe, air pressure over the wings. I might be wrong on that. CL is lift coefficient. This is overall how much lift you're generating. Now, we're not generating much because we're pretty much right on our prograde marker. We're picking up a lot of velocity here. Drag coefficient is how much drag everything's producing in general. Reference area is how much wing surface you've got. Lift, L/W, I'm not too sure. L/D is lift over drag, so that's the ratio of drag to lift. If it's greater than 1, that's perfect. Fuel fraction is how much of your mass is fuel. Thrust-specific fuel consumption. This is, in aerospace engineering terms, this is basically how much fuel you're going to be using to produce thrust. It's another way of measuring efficiency other than specific impulse. Air requirements met. This is a percentage on how much air you have versus how much you need. If this is below 100, the great thing about farm aerospace is the engines no longer just plainly flame out as soon as they have just a little bit less than required air, and you don't instantly go into a flat spin. However, what happens is when this goes less than 100%, these engines will start to lose thrust because the fuel stops burning completely. There's still just enough air to have some combustion, but not enough to have full combustion. I mean, you can see my velocity pick up insanely here. I'll explain that in a minute. So, you know, you want to keep this above 100, otherwise you will go into a bit of a rotation, and then you can have problems with your aerodynamics. Velocity, or lift over drag / thrust specific fuel consumption, this is the combination of how long you could fly for with the combination of your efficiency of your engines as well as lift over drag and whatnot. Velocity, lift over drag, thrust specific fuel consumption, this is the distance you could cover with that. It's a bunch of numbers. Terminal velocity gives you an idea of what your terminal velocity is. We're actually surpassing it, so we're actually wasting energy by accelerating here. Ballistic coefficient is how far your ship could travel overcoming its drag. You can see what we're dropping below the air requirements met, so we're going to start pushing funny here. Just gotta let that rebalance. Now you can see my velocity is unbelievably high. And I mean, this is because the engines don't have a don't seem to have a thrust limiter because they're turbojets. I'm actually gonna kill that throttle altogether. Let some drag take over. So I don't like that. But basically, because we have such a sleek design, our drag is so limited, especially in the upper atmosphere where there's next to no drag. It's like we were just accelerating out of the atmosphere. I mean, this is quite nice because only in the deep high pressure atmosphere is it really, problematic for drag. I mean, you can see my terminal velocity just skyrocketing here as we escape the clutches of the atmosphere. You'll only really have problems if you're in, like, the medium blue point. So we're going to go ahead and just get an orbit here. I mean, you can see, just off my turbojets and just a couple of intakes, I was able to properly get up to speed and, like, get into space. Meaning that I didn't have to waste all my fuel getting in orbit. Now, this is a little excessive, yes, and you could build bigger space planes with the same power and, get just into space and whatnot. And be happy with getting a nice big plane into space compared to something cheap like this. This would be something you would build for someone who just wants to start out. I'm going to look at this. Level, yaw, pitch, angle of attack, and dynamic control assistant. These are wonderful things. Level means it'll use only your control surfaces to level you out so your roll angle is 0 in an atmosphere during flight. Yaw is same idea. It'll use your yaw controls to keep you with the side slip angle of 0. Pitch will hold you at that pitch relative to the surface, so if you set it at 10, it's going to rotate to compensate for the spherical shape of Kerbin. Angle of attack limiter, this means that if you go past your desired angle of attack, say I set mine to 15 degrees, because I check in the VAB and it says like after 15 degrees I'll stall or whatever it tells me. If I go past it, the game will actually take over and push back down towards that to prevent going over. It's quite useful if you are still new at controls. Dynamic control assistance, that is excellent for when you're traveling at high velocities with a spaceplane. Now, some spaceplanes are designed to have really high maneuverability, but at extreme velocities can be very unstable. This is also quite problematic, because you don't want to rip your plane in half after a 3-hour mission with a spaceplane. So you use that, and what it'll do is it'll prevent you from pitching. It'll only let you pitch or yaw or roll so much based on how fast you're going. So if you're traveling 5 times the speed of sound at sea level, you won't get very much control. But that's okay, because a little bit of control will provide more than enough power to rotate you without overdoing it and killing you. Now we are in space, so really all this doesn't matter. Once you're in space, you can basically turn this off. I gotta learn to breathe better when I'm recording, but it's just so much to say. Now, I mean, you can see, you get your flow, your drag, your status, your airspeed, your current drag, and is shielded, false close intake. Is shielded is excellent for if you have a plugin that adds fairings, like Karamzit procedural fairings is excellent for this mod, especially if you've got lots of weirdly shaped things you want to put into space. So from this point, you could effectively go ahead and put yourself into an orbit. I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm actually going to go ahead and just, enter the atmosphere again. Just going to go ahead and go over here. Switch to rocket engine. Oh my. Okay, so you see we forgot to actually set it to turn off these engines. Just going to shut down these engines. Shut down these engines. Go ahead and slow down our orbit a little. Now, if our thing was right, we should have no rotations while slowing down, except, actually, you know what? We won't even know. We won't throttle long enough to understand or to see it. We got about 6 kilometers to ensure that we won't hit the ground, but we will indeed re-enter the atmosphere. Excellent. So my rotation was just right. Actually, we can leave the rocket engine on because we're just going to glide down to a nice finishing landing, really. Now, I will say, this game does not, or this mod does not help with landing. Landing is still all up to you, and it might actually make it even more challenging because next you got to worry about your velocity, the amount of lift over drag you have. Like the higher your lift over drag value, or like if your lift over drag is about 20, you have a glider. It's gonna go for quite some time with no power. I mean, you could travel at 8 meters a second theoretically and still get plenty of lift. However, if you have a low lift over drag, say like this design will have relatively low because delta wings, though they are great for high velocity flight, they're not very good for gliding. So really, you gotta be careful on that. This plane may not land. Like I can't promise a thing. You can check the amount of lift or drag things are producing by right-clicking on them. In this case, we want a higher drag more than lift because the higher lift than drag means that we could pretty much just skip on the atmosphere back into space and somehow, increase the amount of whatever you call it, increase our altitude type thing. There's weird bugs with it. But anyways, so you can see our terminal velocity as it goes down, we pick up a lot more drag. Look at that drag; it's almost 15 times. Our lift over drag is 0.03. So for the amount of lift we're producing, which is going up as we naturally pitch up, you can see this thing's pretty stable. I don't trust taking SAS off, but you can see like it's not doing much. It's doing a little bit for pitch, but other than that, it's not doing much else. We got plenty of electric charge here as our RTGs work away. You can see our velocity slowly going down. Now do keep in mind that this mod also affects rockets, so you gotta make sure that your center of lift is behind your center of mass with rockets as well, otherwise you will flip over and explode. Oh yeah, we're getting Mach effects as we break the sound barrier below 10 kilometers, so with an atmospheric density high enough, we can create a sonic boom with our plane. Also, if you look at the landing gears, it creates silhouette images of your landing gears. I thought it was kind of cool. So now we're going a little bit slower, a little bit safer. We can carefully pitch down. I guess we could also bring these out to turn on your brakes, so that when you touch down, you instantly start stopping. Now you notice if we take SAS off, it wants to sort of roll. I mean, this happens. Sometimes your side slip is a bit weird and whatnot. And you can check it in the VAB or SPH or whatever you've built in using your FAR analysis editor. Normally planes don't have that kind of problem with, wanting to rotate for some reason. But I mean, you never know, right? Some designs are weird. Now, landing, like I said, is a problem because you gotta be able to touch down just delicately enough so as not to break anything, but you don't want to spend too much time in the air losing velocity. It's an art, really. I mean, with only reverse, control panels, it's problematic. Now, you want to try maintain lined up with your landing surface and touchdown, which is a little hard, but we're slowing down and we might hit this bank here. Yep. But we're not rotating, or we're not rolling. Rolling's a problem. Sometimes these will catch air and flip you over and explode. But, there we did it. We brought a space plane into orbit and back down using Ferrum Aerospace to make this a lot easier. Now, you can make big behemoths and put them into space if you have the power to. Really, what you do is up to you. It's all about what you want to build and what you want to hook up there, but Ferrum Aerospace will make it a hell of a lot easier. Thank you all for watching. This has been Shizney Gaming. If I did miss anything, let me know. I'll go over it in another video. Other than that, though, I hope you enjoyed. I'll make other videos about this game too, other mod spotlights, I guess you could say. And, yeah, so have yourself a good time. Stay tuned.